Good morning. My name is Jason Coyle, Operations Section Chief for Southwest Area Team 1. Today is May 26th, and this is your morning operational update for the west zone of the Calf Canyon Hermits Peak fire. So we did get infrared last night. We did get the infrared flight was able to do what we needed to do because we had clear skies, and they recorded the perimeter at 312,057 acres. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to say it that way. 312,057 acres. 46% contained, and there's 3,091 personnel assigned to the incident. So there's a lot of changes that are in store in the weather coming up, and it reminds me of a story about a turkey. So you're gonna have to listen to my story of turkey if you want to hear the rest of what I got to tell you. But anyhow, so there's if somebody's feeding you and taking care of you every day, and you're happy and you think everything's going on, it's easy to think that the next day is going to be the same. But if I told you that everybody's feeding you and taking care of you, and the next day was Thanksgiving, and you're a turkey, then maybe you should think that just because it happened in the past doesn't mean it's what's going to that being taken care of and everything else will happen in the future. And that's us with the weather that's coming up. Just because we've had weather that's been favorable over the last few days for us to be successful, and I'll talk about the progress that we made, we know that doesn't guarantee anything going forward. And we're actually in conversations among all the operations personnel, making sure that we recognize that the differences between past situations and future situations are more important than what's the same. And so we're focusing on those differences and how those differences could affect fire behavior. And I'll talk about one of those differences right now, and then I'll go into some terminology I want to make sure everybody understands, and then we'll get to the map. But one of those differences is the fire-weakened trees. So through a large part of the firefighting effort, we're working along dozer lines adjacent to meadows and where the communities were. And over the last several days in that part of the fire near Angostura specifically, we've been working directly in the timber to put in a line to keep that fire from moving down towards and across the 518 road. So throughout the time that we've been in there working, trees adjacent to the fire line on the black side, on the side that's burned, have the potential of being fire weakened. And so that can happen in a few different ways. We call it a cat's face, I guess, because maybe it looks like a cat, but the backside of a tree can burn out. From one direction, the tree can look fine, and from the other direction, you realize that it's hollowed out except for the very exterior of the bark. The other thing that can happen is that the roots that are near the surface when soils are this dry can catch fire, and the fire can move down through those roots and basically weaken the ability of those roots to hold that tree down. So when one of those two cases occurs, or multiple other ways that a tree can become fire weakened, and then we get winds like are predicted, a tree that was able to withstand those same or stronger winds even prior to becoming fire weakened can fall. So we want to make sure that we're considerate of that as we decide where we're going to put resources, and that we're making sure that we avoid those high hazard situations. And that means we may have to adjust where we're doing work over the coming days to make sure that we don't put people in those situations. Yesterday there's some questions about blowdown, and so the quick Jason version of what blowdown is that there's two different kind of I guess categories of trees that fall over. There are wind throw trees, and that's the ones that get uprooted. So if the tree blows over and it pulls its roots out, and then there's wind snap. And so when you have a wind snap tree, it has broken off somewhere on its trunk. It could be up high, it can be down low. There's different causes for both those things, but primarily in our area, the causes are wind. There's conditions that may make it where they're more likely to do that, like if they're drier because they haven't, because of the drought. trees that in avalanches that wind snap halfway up, it's because they're held in place at the bottom by the snow, and then the avalanche comes and pushes them over. But anyhow, together that makes blowdown. And microbursts and storms, outflows from storms are the main things that cause that, at least in my experience. And I'll make sure the weatherman addresses that if I'm telling you something that's not true. And then there are other questions about snags. So snags are just standing dead trees. So if there's a tree that's dead and it's standing, we would call it a snag. The thing is, when we talk about fire backing down, when fire is moving opposite the slope, so if you're in the bottom of a valley and you look up on the side of the hill and there's fire up above you and it's moving down towards the bottom of that valley, that's backing down. The other one was, I think torching was the last one. They talked about torching and if trees can survive, and if we'll say that a tree completely torched, if it burns all the needles off, it's probably not going to survive. But what we talk about in single and multiple group tree torching, single and group tree torching, is just that one tree torches by itself, or a tree torches and then a group of trees torch. And when we start seeing that more frequently along the fire, then we get concerned that it may actually become a crown fire, where that fire in the tops of those trees moves independent of the ground fire, like we've seen in days past on this incident. All right, so with that, we will get to the map. We'll start on this map. The blue line on here is our primary control line that goes all the way around the fire's perimeter all the way along the dozer line that connects the 518 road back to the Osho Ridge, back through the Luna Fire Scar, and south to above Martinez Pond, west of Chacon. Work's still ongoing on that with multiple different resources to construct that perimeter control line that we talked about in the past days. Additionally, this yellowish greenish line that starts in the Amole Fire and is going east towards Gallegos Peak, and they'll go through the Sardinas Canyon Scar and then up in Luna Fire. The dozers got about to Gallegos Peak yesterday, and so they'll continue to do that work pushing up to the northeast. The rest of the perimeter control that we're putting effort into right now is this piece that's to the east of Lana Largo and goes all the way down to Ripley Point and then ties back into the rocks between Ripley Point and Jicarita Peak. So they're almost to this turn today. We anticipate that they'll make that turn and they'll be able to get that tied in over the next couple of days, and then they'll work to thin out along the edge of that road so that we can use that as perimeter control. Additionally, yesterday, had a crew that was continuing to scout and watch this line's edge for the reasons that I've talked about earlier, about how that dozer line isn't right adjacent to the fire line. I should get over here, be easier. Where that dozer line isn't right adjacent to the fire line, and making sure that none of this edge is still holding heat, and that may threaten to the perimeter, may threaten to spot outside that line. Going to the Division Mike area over here from Angostura West, the crews have made their first pass through here. So they've been able to make one pass across here and cover all this ground. And they'll be working back through it again today. They said there's 9 hotshot crews in there working this ground. And they'll go back and forth a couple times and making sure that we don't see anything. And then we feel good about that. We'll start working on this edge, going back down to the south towards the Serpent Lake Trail. The spot, they've got two crews have been in here working on the spot, thumbs print, and the work there is proceeding, and they're finding less and less heat every day, and they're continuing to extinguish the stuff they find. So today, that's basically the same work's going to continue. We anticipate that we will have aircraft support moving forward to the next couple days as we enter this red flag situation. It's unlikely that we'll have that same level of support at least throughout the entire event. So everything we're doing right now is to make sure that we're prepared for the potential of high winds and the limitations that those winds bring, along with the potential for large fire growth. And there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about. Go back to this map. So there's no intention. We don't have any intention to burn these lines. But yesterday, we have no intention to burn these lines unless it's necessary to prevent the fire from crossing them. So yesterday I didn't do it, but the people that do our fire modeling, I had them put fire all along here and do a 5-day run. And it filled in all the way up here to Martinez Pond and all this stuff. So I'd ask people when they think about time and space, and they're like, well, that seems like a long ways away if you're only worried about fire coming out of this one little area. This line is only effective if we do burn it. So when we think about where we need to place these lines, it's not that if the fire gets across the 518 road, we can stand there with hoses and hold it. Because even though the line is 20, 40 feet wide of dirt, and then there's 150 feet of trees that have been thinned on either side, the conditions that would cause the fire to make a big run to the north, like the wind conditions we're seeing over the next several days, are the same conditions that would make it impossible to hold that if we didn't burn off of it. So if you can imagine that fire is all in this area at the end of that wind event, and then we have to burn this line to prevent the fire from getting across it, that's going to take a lot of time. And so we have to put the line far enough away that we can anticipate how much fire growth could occur, and then how much time it takes and space it takes for us to do our actions to prevent it from going across. Again, we don't plan on burning that line, but putting a line so close that one bad event would bring the fire across it is a waste of effort, and it risks people's lives unnecessarily. So we're not going to do that. And that is the end of the operational report. Thank you.